What players will break out in Dynasty 2023? Well, we have a little list that we're going to bring to you of players that we believe
That's right, baby.
this is the year they're going to break out and their value could rise. Do us a massive favor. Go ahead and smash that like button.
Let's go.
Comment down below before you see anyone else. Before you see our takes, who's going to break out in your opinion?
Yep.
Let us know. And subscribe if you like Dynasty content. Right before we get into those names that are going to break out, if you want my rankings, Badake's rankings, all your favorite YouTube content creators rankings, go ahead and use our code LAND at flockfantasy.com/land. That's going to get you 30% off. And if you choose that Mother Flocker tier,
That's right.
Badake and I are going to give you a Dynasty team review on a live stream. Okay, so 2 players each. I'll start here.
Mm-hmm.
The first player that I believe is going to break out in 2023, and I might need to even adjust my redraft rankings for this player, but we're talking about Dynasty.
Yeah.
How about J.K. Dobbins?
Bobbing
What
like I'm Dobbins.
a path we have been on with J.K. Dobbins. It's been up. It's been down. He's the RB16 according to the community in Dynasty. Oddly enough, same for me. He's my RB16 as well in Dynasty. And he is finally healthy. Genuinely this time. Like, we don't have to look at these reports that say, yeah, he'll probably be ready for camp starts. He'll probably be ready for week 1. He looks okay. Like, we'll see. Yeah, he should be fine. No, 2 years removed from that ACL injury, we have liftoff, ladies and gentlemen. He will be full go in 2023.
Yeah.
And what could we see in 17 healthy games for J.K. Dobbins in 2023? Well, I don't know about you guys, but watching J.K. Dobbins in 2022, there were some moments where I was like, okay, he needs an entire offseason now because my guy was limping to like 100-yard performances. But what did he do in 2022 then? Okay. Well, in 8 games, he had 520 yards, 3 total touchdowns, was very efficient. If you extrapolate that to a 17-game season, J.K. Dobbins, even just last year, he's more healthy right here, right now, going into 2023. But even last year, if you extrapolate those numbers into a 17-game season, he's looking at over 1,100 rushing yards and 6 total touchdowns. He was really, really efficient in his limited time in 2022. If you look at J.K. Dobbins last year, he was 4th in yards per attempt. Now, PFF and some other sites, yards per attempt or yards per carry, it's kind of a little bit different, but he was 4th at 5.5. He was tied with a couple people. His breakaway percentage was 8th. That's 38.5%. What does that mean, breakaway percentage? How many of your designed runs went for more than 15 yards? 38.5% of J.K. Dobbins' designed runs did so. They went for more than 15 yards. And that's surprising. Look at this guy hobbling all over the field, and somehow he still has an efficient year. Yards after contact per attempt, he was 28th. Now, that's not like impressive by any means, but again, given his status during the season, I found that to be relatively impressive. And those numbers are all from a minimum of 50 attempts last year, according to PFF Premium Stats. In fact, not only last year, J.K. Dobbins has been efficient his entire career. Efficiency has been J.K. Dobbins. If you look up the word efficiency in the dictionary, there's a picture of J.K. Dobbins. That's just the reality. In 23 NFL games, Dobbins has 1,325 rushing yards on 5.9 yards per attempt. Okay. If you look at his rookie and his last year, in 42 college football games, he has over 4,400 rushing yards on 6.2 yards per attempt. In fact, why don't we go back and look at the last time J.K. Dobbins was fully healthy in the NFL? His rookie season in 2020. Remember, Mark Ingram started the year as a starter, and over time, we started to see J.K. Dobbins slowly but surely you can't keep this guy off the field in 2020 as a rookie. And yards per attempt, he was 1st at 5.8. Breakaway percentage, which we talked about earlier, he was 4th as a rookie. Yards after contact per attempt, he was 10th as a rookie. He had 10 touchdowns, which ended up being 8th best, and he was the 14th best elusive rating according to PFF. Again, a minimum of 50 attempts. J.K. Dobbins has been efficient his entire career, and if he's finally truly healthy this year, oh boy, it could be a fun year for J.K. Dobbins finally. And look, there's no real threat to Dobbins' touches this year. Really, I was someone who pretty strongly believed that the Ravens would draft a running back in the 2023 draft. It was such a deep class, and establishing the run was just it's so important for this team that I thought for sure they're going to draft one of these running backs that we like, and it's going to make it really messy. I mean, the more I dove into J.K. Dobbins this offseason, I kind of understand. He's their guy. He is their guy, and they're ready for him to dominate in 2023. You look at this depth chart, it's J.K. Dobbins, it's Gus Edwards, who Gus will play a role. He'll play that spell back role. But outside of that, it's Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell. I mean, Dobbins is set to get minimum 220 carries this year if he's healthy, all games. So we could see even more, if you include, let's say, targets in the air. But he's set to at least, if he plays all 17 games, have 220 plus carries in 2023. And this offense that, is coming together is much better than it was last year, right? Those carries will be even more valuable in 2023 than they were in 2022. Last year was very out of character for this offense. They were 20th in points per game. Okay. Got rid of the offensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator in town from Georgia. They added OBJ, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman will be back and healthy. Lamar Jackson's on the contract. You can see 2019, 2020, this offense was top 10 in both years. I think we'll see a similar result for the Baltimore Ravens in 2023. If Lamar stays healthy, if Dobbins stays healthy, if these wide receivers are all there for them, I think we're going to see another top 10 points per game finish for this Baltimore Ravens offense. And I think J.K. Dobbins plays a big, big part of that. Now, last thing I'll say, of course, you have to have low to none expectations for him through the air. And I hear you guys there. I totally hear you guys. But again, with what he can do on the ground, with how efficient this offense will be, I think we'll have a ton of opportunities to score. And I think JK is going to break out here in 2023.
Yeah, love it. JK, one of my guys. I've always been leaning on for the bounce back, and I absolutely love it. So, bobbing like I'm Dobbins, the breakout, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, my next guy is a guy I've kind of spoken about for the past 3 years, essentially. And I'm back on, not that I'm back on the train, still on the train. And this year is going to be the breakout year. This is the year. Come on, baby. This is the year. Like a Dallas Cowboy fan, we're going to Super Bowl this year. We're going to win it. Yeah. And this is me, right? And this for this player, and that's Elijah Moore. Currently in the community, wide receiver 44. He's my wide receiver 38. Honestly, going to continue to rise as we get closer into this season. But let me remind you who Elijah Moore is, because I think a lot of people do forget of who Elijah Moore is, because he's kind of been in this offense for the Jets that was pretty bad, right? He was selected with the 34th pick in the second round in the 2021 draft out of Ole Miss, and at the time he was one of the most overlooked and underrated slot wide receivers and slot runners of that draft class. And there's no doubt in my mind that he would have been a first round draft pick, just purely based on his talent, right? But what really happened is that all the talent that was in that draft class, let me remind you, these wide receivers that went ahead of him, that all went in the first round. Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Kadarius Toney, Rashad Bateman. I'm even going to throw Kyle Pitts in that, because that was a year of a crazy fantasy football and a phenomenal fantasy football draft. And Elijah Moore was part of that. Once again, just went to a circumstance that we weren't really expecting to be there, but the talent was there and is still there. Okay. So also his collegiate career, this is what he did in his last year in 2020, 86 receptions out of 101 targets, over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. Then he gets put into a terrible situation. And that leads me to my second point. And that is the history of this quarterback room that he was playing with and that offense, right? He gets drafted to the Jets, and then you have Zach Wilson, who clearly is not the guy now, ranked 68 out of 82 in passer grading in this past year. And I don't even want to get into what Mike White was, Joe Flacco was. Whoever quarterback he was playing with was not competent, okay, period. And I think a lot of people are saying, well, Garrett Wilson was there. He was kind of doing good, but he was getting peppered with targets. Elijah Moore, that was not the case for him, right? So he also gets overshadowed by Garrett Wilson. Third, you want to look at, the next thing you look at is, okay, now that he gets traded to this Browns team, they still traded for a second round pick, which is the same draft capital essentially that they drafted him with. So that means they still believe in him in a high regard, especially giving up a second round pick for Elijah Moore. Now, I mean, there's really no need for me to remind about Deshaun Watson's success, but he has been a top 5 quarterback, every single year he's played outside of his rookie year in this past year, right, in 2022. And there's no doubt he has made fantasy relevant wide receivers in this offense, or not in this offense, but in the past as well, since 2018. 2018, D-Hop wide receiver 1, 19 wide receiver 5. In 2020, he had Cooks. That's when D-Hop left. Cooks wide receiver 17 in the weeks 1 to 12 before Will Fuller got hurt. Wide receiver 8. He knows how to keep fantasy relevant wide receivers, or create fantasy relevant wide receivers, right? My next point will be is a limited production, but with great route running coming from Elijah Moore. But before I really get into that, what I really want to really hint on and I guess express is how bad the Jets were utilizing Elijah Moore. When you look at Elijah Moore and where he came from out of Ole Miss, he was primarily a slot receiver. 2018, 99.6% in the slot. 2019, 98.1% in the slot. 2020, 79.8% in the slot. Then he gets drafted by the Jets. Then he goes to 70.8 out wide. That's not where he succeeds. That's not where his role is. And then in 2020, he goes to 50.2% out wide. Obviously, they got Garrett Wilson. 2022, Garrett Wilson that year. So they kind of switched things up. Now coming into this team, he's clearly going to be the slot receiver with Amari Cooper on the outside, Elijah Moore in the slot, and however way you want to put it with DPJ or Cedric Tillman, whatever the case may be. And I really want to hit on his success rate according to reception perception of Matt Harmon, because I think it's phenomenal. And that was one of the things that people were really excited for. I mean, we weren't on the Matt Harmon train early when Elijah Moore came in, but he did go back and look at all those statistics. But look, something like a lot for Elijah Moore, who is 5'10", 178 pounds, winning on press at 73.3%, versus press at 70th percentile, right? And that was in his first year in 2021 as a rookie. Okay, man coverage 81st with 75.2, and then zone coverage 81.4 with 76th percentile. And you can see the success in his route running. Hopefully there's a graphic on your screen. You can see he was essentially winning every single route, 6x by route. So there is success there for Elijah Moore. And really quick, going into the 2022 season, he stays above average, still continues to improve in areas, especially against the press, with the 75.8 percentile, or success rate with 78 percentile. Once again, 5'10", a small wide receiver. So when you insert Elijah Moore into this offense with Deshaun Watson, who has been a top 5 quarterback in fantasy relevancy, and then also produces top 5, top 10, let's say top 15 wide receivers, there's no doubt in my mind that Elijah Moore could at least be a top 15 wide receiver for the first time in his career. And he is going still really, really cheap right now. Whether you want to buy him, whether you want to draft him in the 9th round in your dynasty startups, there's still so much opportunity for this team. And not only that, Deshaun Watson has already said openly, saying that this offense is going to open up the playbook. I know the Browns have been a run-heavy team, but Deshaun Watson wants to change that. A lot of people are kind of already, in a way, fading Nick Chubb, and that's for a big reason, because Deshaun Watson is there, right? So if you can get Elijah Moore, if Elijah Moore is not a breakout for you this year, please, I hope I convinced you, and I really believe, once again, this is the year for Elijah Moore.
Yeah, it certainly could be. As a bystander in the Elijah Moore, there's Elijah Moore stands, there's people who don't believe in him, and there's people in the middle like me. And I'm like, absolutely, it could happen. Like if he gets the targets, it definitely could happen.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see that happen for him this year. I would love to see that. And I think it absolutely is within the realm of possibilities, and I like it. Okay. The last player I'm going to bring to you guys today, and we'll do more videos like this if you guys like them.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments below. And I feel very confident. And oddly enough, the reason I love this breakout is because there are many people on the opposite side of what I'm about to tell you. Many people. And I think they're overthinking it. I think sometimes you can dive into so many analytics and you can dive into so many different crevices that you almost overthink something that is so simple. And that is Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks is going to break out in 2023 if he stays healthy. Okay?
Oh boy.
It's going to happen. And let me tell you why.
Be careful.
Can I just say as well quickly, this is also a Chigakonkwo take, okay? Because Chigakonkwo is also going to break out, I think, in 2023 along with Treylon Burks.
I like Chick as well.
Okay, so Treylon Burks today is a wide receiver 27 in Dynasty rankings. 2 weeks ago, I brought you guys a buy low video with him in it. He was a wide receiver 29 at that time. Could be rising up boards, ladies and gentlemen. Could be. He's my wide receiver 16 in Dynasty. I think that should be explained because, as we've talked before, our tiers are really what's more important than specific rankings. The tier he's in is my 4th tier, okay? And that's as low as wide receiver 22, as high as wide receiver 15, okay? So if you really have him any lower than wide receiver 22, then we just don't see eye to eye, and that's fine. But I have him currently as wide receiver 16. It's fluid, so hopefully that makes sense. But firstly, look, someone help me understand. What has the Tennessee Titans done this entire offseason that's hurt Treylon Burks? Genuinely, I would love to know. Please comment down below right now. Name one thing that has hurt Treylon Burks that the franchise has done this entire offseason. One thing, okay? Because all I see is this entire organization trying to make Treylon Burks a star this year. They improved the offensive line in the draft. They added Peter Skoronski. They had a couple other linemen in free agency, and I think they spent a later round pick on him as well. This gives whoever the quarterback is more time in the pocket. It improves the offense as a whole, and it doesn't take away from Treylon Burks. Secondly, they brought in more quarterback competition. Okay, we definitely missed on Malik Willis. Instead of just riding with Ryan Tannehill, why don't we get Will Levis in here and see what the hell happens? Ryan Tannehill is a fine starter, but if Will Levis turns out to be something, great. I mean, why wouldn't you want your team to just take more shots at potential success at the quarterback position? They drafted him with a 33rd pick, and thinking about how, for myself, I'm not a Will Levis truther necessarily, right? I mean, I've known to be a hater of his throughout the offseason. But one thing I did notice in film, specifically when he had Wan'Dale Robinson on his team, is how much he favored Wan'Dale Robinson. And oh boy, I could see Treylon Burks being Will Levis's Wan'Dale Robinson in Tennessee. I love imagining how they could grow together. And they didn't add a single wide receiver. Like, there is no one that this team added to compete with Treylon Burks. Opportunities will be there. Not only did they not add someone to compete with Treylon Burks, they got rid of people that were competing with him. The 2 players who led the Titans in targets are gone. Robert Woods and Austin Hooper led this team individually. Collectively, they had 151 targets on the year. They're gone. They didn't bring anyone in outside of Chris Moore, who's clearly not going to be someone who's replacing that sort of volume. They didn't bring anyone in to compete. Nick Westbrook-Ikini's there. He's clearly just a guy. They're clearly not building around him. And then you have a healthy Kyle Pitts and Chigakonkwo, who is going to benefit Treylon Burks. That's going to help him when they are healthy. And Treylon Burks averaged 4.9 targets per game while only averaging 57.8% of the snaps in 2022. Rookies don't come out. Typically, they don't come out of the gate and just play 90, 80% of the snaps. That typically doesn't happen. Now, throughout the season, you start to see them get there unless there's an injury. And that's what we had for Treylon Burks. He had only played 11 games. He had that concussion. Remember where he caught that touchdown and was concussed midair? He had the concussion. He had the wrist injury. He had the toe injury. But in the last 2 weeks, let's look at the trends to end the year. What was this team trying to accomplish? In the last 2 weeks, when Treylon was healthy, he averaged 7.5 targets per game while seeing 73.5% of the snaps. If Treylon is healthy in 2023, he is going to be an 80, 90% snap type of player. He will be on the field for 80, 85, 90% of the snaps. And it's almost like, how does he not see 7 to 8 targets a game if that's the case, based off what we've seen? We saw flashes of brilliance last year as well. Again, only played 11 games. However, we saw this consistent little improvement in one season from hell, really, is what we could call it. But weeks 1 to 9 versus weeks 10 to 8, right? He goes up in his fantasy position. He gets more targets, more receptions, more receiving yards, and a higher points per game. One of my biggest comps for Treylon Burks coming out of college was Deebo Samuel. So let's just compare their analytics from this year. Yards after catch per reception. I think Burks could be potentially a monster in this category this year. Deebo was first. Treylon, as a rookie, was 12th. That's a pretty good sign right there. Look at yards per reception. Treylon was better than Debo. He was better than Debo in yards per route run, in ADOT, in drop percentage, in contested catch percentage. You can see some of the areas in which they had some similarities. Of course, they're not the same exact player, right? But some areas they had similarities. Yak, yards per route run. But you can see other areas where Treylon analytically maybe already has potentially an up on Debo Samuel as one sort of gets to their prime and one starts to break out. But if you really want hope for Debo Samuel, the one game I would suggest you go watch is Week 11 versus Green Bay. I believe this was a Thursday night. I can't remember, but he put up 7 catches on 8 targets for 111 yards. And you saw specifically that deep ball versus Jaire Alexander. Someone made fun of me the last time I said Jaire Alexander. Am I saying it wrong? Jaire Alexander?
Jaire.
Whatever. Say it however you want to. He sunned him. He absolutely sunned him. Treylon Burks did. That's the reason for hope. And lastly, don't forget the draft capital. We are 1 year removed and people are putting a coffin in Treylon Burks. Insane. The expectations that people have nowadays is just, it's ridiculous. 1 year removed from this guy, the Titans trading A.J. Brown and deciding to replace him with Treylon Burks with the 18th overall pick in the first round. No wide receiver in 2023 was drafted higher than Treylon Burks last year. That's not to suggest that JSN's, not better, because I do prefer JSN in Dynasty, but it's to highlight the serious investment from the Titans. And if we talk about investing in first-round wide receivers, why don't we look at the last 5 years? 21 total wide receivers were drafted in the first round. I can't include 2023 in this, okay? But if you look at it, only the players in red were busts, okay? N'Keal Harry, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Reagor. Why don't we look at those first-round wide receivers, and let's take out 2022, because we can't really determine if they're hits or busts just yet. So from 2018 to 2021, 4 years, we have 15 total wide receivers in that sample size. 40% of them have finished top 12. We have 67% of them who have finished top 24, and only 20% of them who have, I would consider, busts, right? Those to-be-confirmed type players in there, you've got your Kadarius Toney, Rashad Bateman, Jameson Williams, put Treylon Burks in there as well. But again, with the amount of targets that he's going to see, man, I just don't see how he fails. And I've had the opportunity to hear feedback because I've talked about Treylon Burks a lot this offseason. And I'm happy to, I know what people have been saying about Treylon Burks. I'm happy to address it here quickly to end this take. A couple things I've heard from the community. Firstly is the route running. Okay, genuinely, whether you like Treylon Burks or you don't, can we be honest for a second? Did you really watch Treylon Burks on film in college at Arkansas and think he was going to be this incredible route runner to start his career? Did any of us have expectations that would be a strength in his game just yet? Me, no. I didn't expect him to come out of the block being this incredible route runner. He's going to continually improve in that area, but I think the Titans, again, will feature him similarly to how we've seen Debo be featured, maybe Cordero Patterson. There's a new sort of position that's continually growing in the NFL. So he'll improve in that area, but he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to be this top 10 route runner to be successful in fantasy football. Other thing I've heard, okay, it's not the GM who drafted him. It's a different GM. Well, the GM who did take over this entire offseason had an entire offseason to plan around adding wide receivers in this wide receiver room. Didn't add one in free agency. He didn't draft one in the first round. At every turn, he did not add competition for Treylon Burks. Hard to say he doesn't believe in him or wants to see him succeed. And the last thing that I've heard a lot is, well, the Tennessee Titans are a bad offense. They're a bad offense. Guys, really? Volume is king, and you guys should know that by now. We see good wide receivers, good running backs, good fantasy players from bad offenses every year. It happens. How about Jerry Jeudy in 2020? He was on the last offense in points per game. He was a top 22 wide receiver. Michael Pittman was a wide receiver 20 last year in the 30th ranked offense. Terry McLaurin was a wide receiver 14 in the 24th ranked offense. How about we go back to 2021? You can see DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deontay Johnson all finished as wide receiver 2s or better, and all their offenses were in the bottom third of the NFL. How about 2020? Again, Terry, Robbie Anderson, Allen Robinson, all these guys' offenses were in the bottom third of the NFL, and they still finished as top 20 wide receivers. Why? Because volume is king, and Treylon Burks will have plenty of volume to go around. He will break out, And I'm very, very excited for that in 2023 because I have a lot of shares of him. He's been so cheap as well. Like on the edge of a first round pick, and how weak this 2023 draft class is. I'm telling, like, take advantage. Send the 110, send the 111, send the 109 if you don't like Zay. I mean, I like Zay. But like that 110, 111, 112, he is going for ridiculously cheap prices. Take advantage of it because I think we're going to be wheels up in 2023.
Yeah, definitely opportunity for Treylon Burks. I think I feel like I am the also the bystander. It's not that I don't dislike him. I don't love him. I'm kind of like in the middle. If it happens, that's great. If it doesn't, that's unfortunate, right? So I'm really interested. I actually don't have any Treylon Burks stock whatsoever in any of my leagues. So I
have him in 60% of my league.
Yeah, so I don't have.
I think like this is so simple to me. I just think sometimes we overthink things too much in Dynasty. I think this is so simple. 100%. It's like
100%.
Yeah. So anyway.
All right, my second breakout player and the last player on this list. Be careful, and that is Kenny Pickett. I brought him in a couple last week in a video here, and I'm bringing him again because I'm really believing in the breakout season for Kenny Pickett. That sophomore jump. According to the community right now, he's QB 17. I actually have him as QB 18, so I'm a little. There's one person I would rather take over Kenny at the moment, but I can definitely see that changing maybe as the season gets closer. But a couple of reasons why I truly believe he's going to break out. One of the biggest things last year that we were talking about for this Steelers offense, not for the quarterback position, but also for Najee Harris and these wide receivers, is that this offensive line was terrible, that they needed to go out and improve this offensive line in any way possible because there was no time in the pocket. Najee Harris was getting stopped behind the line of scrimmage oftentimes, and they were getting sacked often. Right, so what did they do in the first round? They trade up and they draft Broderick Jones. Not only do they do that, they sign 3 different offensive linemen, 2 from the Eagles, 1 from the Jets, and bring in another, I guess you can say, offensive line / tight end in Darnell Washington, right? I mean, that's kind of the whole narrative around him. He's another offensive lineman, so he's another guy that can block for Kenny Pickett, which I think it's pretty big, once again, for an offensive line that has been struggling. Second is the weapons. Kenny is set with a great arsenal of weapons that he's going to continue to grow with. And without a doubt, they're going to continue to add weapons on for him as the years come, right? George Pickens is expected to take a massive year 2 leap, right? Deontay Johnson has always been a Mr. Consistent, a Mr. Safety Blanket, been peppered with targets. Pat the Dragon, Pat Frymuth, also expected to take a big step. He's grown, rising up rankings in dynasty rankings in the tight end position. Najee Harris, a lot of people have been fading him, saying that he's actually a good buy low now based off of what's happening over there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then you have Jalen Warren, just in case, Allen Robinson, just because, right? I mean, there's other players in other situations that can help you. And now Darnell Washington that comes in however way they want to utilize him, all weapons for Kenny Pickett. And then you think of the sophomore jump. Okay, last year, you have to remember Kenny didn't really get the work until week 3, and that was very up and down. And it was like, oh well, Mitch got injured, and Kenny's playing right now. But when Mitch is healthy, he can come back in, and then Kenny Pickett was in fully, and then he gets a concussion, and then Mitch comes back in, and then Kenny comes back, and then he gets a concussion again, right? There was no consistency for Kenny whatsoever on the field. But when there was consistency, which is in the second half of the season, that's where you saw Kenny Pickett really take that next step, okay? All of 5 Kenny Pickett's highest PFF passing grade came after week 12. Week 12 versus the Colts, 86.3 passing grade. Week 13 versus Atlanta, 72.5 passing grade. Week 16 versus Vegas, 73.1 passing grade. Week 17, 90 plus passing grade. Week 18, 73.5. And that's what you want to see, consistency in the second half of the season, especially for a quarterback that the game is slowing down, that he's learning the offense, he's feeling more comfortable with this NFL timing, and understanding how the things that he needs to improve on week in and week out. Let me remind you, Kenny Pickett was a first-round pick for this team, and going to one of the most successful NFL organizations that have really brought up successful quarterbacks. And not only that, he has a successful head coach in Mike Tomlin. So I'm really, really comfortable getting Kenny in. Once again, you think of the price right now in the second half of your rookie drafts, and you need a quarterback, and you don't want to invest in Will Levis, who didn't get the draft capital we all expected. Kenny Pickett, you can send the 110, the 111, the 112 for him, a guy that was drafted in the first round. Okay, you can even, for a guy also that is getting drafted from round 6 and 7 in your dynasty startups, I truly believe Kenny Pickett could be and will be a breakout quarterback this year. We may be drafting him at the turn, kind of where we're drafting Tua, kind of where we're drafting Daniel Jones, and that is going to be a massive breakout here for Kenny Pickett with the weapons around him, with a better offensive line, with another year under his belt in this offense, and I'm really excited. Mind you, one thing I didn't mention is that Kenny Pickett can rush. I'm not saying he's going to be rushing for crazy yards, but the last year in Pittsburgh, he had like almost over 400 yards on the ground. So we need to remember that he can be elusive. He can get out of the pocket. He can get an extra, maybe he'll have one game where he rushes for, 6 attempts, and maybe he has like 30, 40 yards. That's points. However way it comes, Kenny Pickett can definitely get you that. So I'm really excited for Kenny coming out this year.
Yes, let's see. I'm a bystander. As a Pickens stan, though, I would love it. I would absolutely love if that were
I think what's interesting is like everyone is loving the weapons around. Everyone loves Pat. Everyone loves George. Everyone thinks Najee is a good buy low opportunity right now, but no one is talking about Kenny. No one's giving love on Kenny.
I hear you. I just think the reason why is because what's in control for the wide receivers and the weapons and everyone is something they can control. But they can't control how the offense is ultimately run through Kenny.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So ultimately it does come down to him. And you're right in the sense that, like, okay, we all love these weapons and they're all around Kenny Pickett. But at the end of the day, I just think like Kenny, that quarterback position is you're either good or you're not. Like it's
I agree.
We find out at the end of the day. So hey. Those are some of our breakout players here in 2023. Thanks for watching. Go ahead and drop a like. Subscribe if you like Dynasty content. And we'll see you guys in the next video. All up. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.